Hello and welcome to the part 2 of creating your first trigger. We are going to start off by creating a trigger function. A trigger function basically will define the action that will be invoked when a trigger fires. So open up your PG4admin tool, and once you've opened it up, expand the DVD rental database and expand the schema, expand the public schema, and then right towards the bottom there is a trigger function. So right click on that and click on create trigger function, and it will give you this dialog box. So you've got to complete each of these tabs. So the first tab we're on now is this general tab. So we're going to ask you a few things. First, the name of the trigger. It's good to give your trigger a descriptive name. The name you add or you give to your trigger is going to be displayed in the PGAdmin tree tool, and you have to know that trigger functions will be invoked in alphabetical order. All right, just to let you know. So we just need to check that everything on this page is correct. The owner is this database here, Postgres. So if you drop down, Postgres owns it. And then the schema is public. We've only got the one schema. You can put comment in there if you want. So let's move on to the definition. So on the definition page, the return type, the default is trigger, and the language is PL/PG SQL. And then where it's got code, this is where you will add the code that will execute when the trigger function is called. So I've already pre-staged the code. I'm going to add it on there. So this is the code that I will be adding into the PGAdmin tool. So I'm just going to highlight and click copy and paste it in there. So I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, so let's move on to the next tab, which is the options tab. So let's click on this tab here that says volatility. I'll just explain what that means. If you click on the drop down, there are other options. So basically what these options in volatile basically indicates that the trigger function value can change even within a single table scan. All right, so that would be the one I will be using, but I'll just run through the other options. Stable indicates that the trigger function cannot modify the database, and that within a single table scan it will consistently return the same result for the same argument values. Immutable means that the trigger function cannot modify the database and always returns the same result when given the same argument value. So this immutable means the result will not change when you give it the same arguments. Okay, so I'm going to go for volatile because this option basically indicates that the value can change even with a single table scan. So that's what we're going to select. Then we'll go through. These are all default values, but you can change them if you wish to do so. This return a set. Basically, this switch indicates if the trigger function returns a set that includes multiple rows. The default is no. So I'm going to leave the default. This switch here, the strict switch, basically indicates if the trigger function is going to always return null whenever any of its argument is null. Null basically means the value is not known. So you can set it to yes. that means the function is not executed when there is a null argument. So if you set this option to yes, it will not execute when there are null arguments. So I'm going to leave it to no. Here we've got security definer. This switch basically specifies that the trigger function is to be executed with the privileges of the user that created it. So the default is no. So if you only want the person who created it to execute, you can set it to yes. But I'm going to leave it to no because I want other people to be able to execute it. And then here we've got the move the window. This switch basically indicates that the trigger function is a window function rather than a plain function. Okay, so if you want it to indicate a window function, you change that option to yes. But I'm going to leave it to no because it's going to be a normal function. And then we have another option here, estimated cost. Basically, you can use this field to specify a positive number representing the estimated execution cost for the trigger function. So this can be in units of CPU operator cost. If the function returns a set, this is the cost per returned row. So you can put a value there if you wish to do so. For illustration purposes, I'm going to enter 100 in there. So we've got this option here, estimated row. You can see at the moment it's grayed out. Basically, this estimated row is used to specify a positive number given the estimated number of rows that the query planner should expect the trigger function to return. So this is only allowed when the function is declared to return a set. The default is usually set to 1,000 rows, but I'm not going to put any value in there at the moment. So we've got this switch here that says leak proof. This switch basically indicates whether the trigger function has side effects. So the default option is no, and this option can only be set by a super user. So next, I'm going to click on the next tab, which is the parameters tab. So you can use this to specify any settings that will be applied when the trigger function is invoked. So let's move on to the next tab, which is the SQL tab. This tab basically is going to compile all the information we've entered in all the other tabs. It will compile it into a complete SQL statement. So once that's done, click on save, and that will create the function. So you can see here, the function has been created. It's called log last name underscore changes. So that's it for the part 2 of creating your first trigger. In the part 3 and the final part, we will be creating the actual trigger. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.